There's a 26-year-old somewhere in America right now, sitting in an apartment he can't really afford, doing the math for the 4th time this month, adding up the rent and the car payment and the student loans, and the health insurance, and the groceries that cost more every single trip. He followed the map they handed him, he got the degree, he took the salaried job, he showed up early and stayed late. And somehow the harder he works, the further the finish line slides away. A house used to be the reward at the end of that road. Now it's a horizon that backs away every time he gets close. So he did what millions of people his age do. He pulled out his phone and started asking the questions out loud. He did everything the way they told him to, so where is the life they promised? Where are the guarantees that were supposed to come with playing by the rules? And the bigger one, the one that scares people, what if the American dream isn't just hard to reach anymore? What if it was quietly taken apart while we were still chasing it? And here's the part nobody wants to say on camera. The answer his generation is landing on isn't work harder, it's burn the whole thing down. In 2025, a Cato Institute survey found that 62% of young Americans, the 18 to 29 crowd, now have a favorable view of socialism. And that single number quietly breaks everything you were ever told about how this is supposed to work. The most educated generation this country has ever produced, the one that played by every rule it was handed, is the one now ready to walk away from the system that wrote those rules. These aren't lazy people who refuse to work. They did everything that was asked of them, and the reward never showed up. Here's the paradox that should keep you up at night. They have the diplomas, the certifications, the student loan statements to prove it. What they don't have is the one thing all of that was supposed to buy, anything they actually own. The smartest workforce in American history holds the smallest slice of American wealth in living memory. And you can see it in one number. Today, for someone actually trying to buy a home, the monthly payment has climbed to around $2,800 every month just to have a roof. For millions of people, that's not a mortgage, that's half of everything they earn, gone before they buy a single thing. A whole generation now hands over half its paycheck just to exist indoors. You cannot blame that on avocado toast. A squeeze that size isn't a personal failure, it's the system doing exactly what it was built to do. Because the ladder these people were told to climb didn't get steeper. Somebody quietly pulled the bottom rungs off, and when an entire generation works harder than the one before it and ends up with less, the smarter question isn't, why are they angry? It's why anyone would build a machine that grinds up its own most loyal players, the very people holding it together. So here's what this really comes down to. Capitalism was sold to this generation as a ladder. Climb it and you win. But a ladder only works if the rungs are real. And an entire generation just looked down and realized they're standing at the bottom of a pyramid, holding up everyone above them. So in this video, we're going to put both systems on the table and stop pretending either one is magic. We're going to follow one ordinary guy as the system he trusted quietly bankrupts him, and then trace exactly who ends up holding his money. Then we're going to look at socialism, the real version, not the campaign poster, and at one country that actually tried a piece of it, where it backfired so fast it stunned the people who voted for it. Because the question isn't whether this generation is angry. They are, and they have every reason to be. The question is whether the answer they're reaching for fixes the machine or just hands the keys to someone new at the top of the same pyramid. Let me give that 26-year-old a name, because he's about to walk straight into the trap that defines this whole story. Call him Jake. Jake rents an apartment in a building owned not by a person, but by a real estate fund. The kind that texts him about rent hikes from an address that doesn't exist, and every single paycheck, a chunk disappears before he ever sees it, into health insurance, because that's what responsible adults are told to do. Jake is one face standing in for millions doing exactly the same thing. Then one ordinary Tuesday, his side starts to hurt. By midnight, he can't stand up straight. It's his appendix, and it's about to burst. An ambulance, a surgery, a few nights in a hospital bed. And here's the part Jake actually believed, that this was the moment the insurance was for. This was the rainy day he'd been paying into for years. He had coverage. He did everything a careful person is supposed to do. So he recovers, he goes back to work, and he waits for the system to do the one thing it promised. Then the envelope arrives. His insurance covered part of it and quietly denied the rest, and the number left over has more digits than his savings account, $20,000. For a guy living paycheck to paycheck, that's not a bill, that's a sentence. And Jake isn't some outlier who made a mistake. Having insurance and being protected, it turns out, are two completely different things. Across the country, nearly a third of people with solid employer coverage have already skipped care they actually needed, just because they were scared of what it would cost. The system trained them to fear the doctor more than the disease. This is where the trap actually closes. And watch where it closes, not on his present, but on his entire future. The unpaid balance gets sold off to a collections agency. Then it hits his credit report. And in a single month, Jake's credit score drops 70 points. That number was the one key he had to a mortgage, the single most reliable way an ordinary person in this country builds any wealth at all. So follow what just happened. A burst appendix didn't just cost him $20,000, it quietly locked him out of ever owning a home for years. And before you tell yourself Jake is a rare horror story, understand that he is the baseline. Right now, in the wealthiest country in human history, around 100 million Americans are carrying medical debt, roughly 4 in 10 adults in the entire country. 100 million. That is not a glitch. You do not get a number that size from 100 million people being careless. You get a number that size when the machine is built to produce it. So Jake sits at his kitchen table, premium paid, rules followed, future quietly canceled, and he reaches the only conclusion that makes sense to him. The system took his money and then took his shot. And he's not wrong. But here's the question almost nobody stops to ask in that moment, and it's the only one that actually matters. The money that vanished from Jake's life didn't evaporate into thin air. Every dollar went somewhere specific, into a vault, with a name on it and an address. And if you follow that money all the way up, you finally get to see who's been holding the other end of this the whole time. Picture a casino where you've been handed a small stack of chips and told to go win your future. You sit down, you learn the rules, you play your hands carefully, and then you find out something about the 3 players sitting across from you. Those 3 players manage the building, they pay the dealer who hands you your cards, they control the ATM in the lobby where you pull out money to keep playing. And quietly, they even hold a slice of the very chips sitting in your own hand. You can play perfectly flawless strategy, every decision correct, and the house still wins. Because the house isn't just the house. The house is also your opponent across the table, your banker when you run dry, and your landlord when you go home. That's not a metaphor stretched too far. That's a literal description of who steers the modern American economy. The 3 players have names: BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street. Together, these 3 firms manage over $20 trillion. To put that somewhere your brain can actually hold it, that's more than the entire economic output of the United States in a single year. Everything the country produces, every car, every meal, every hour of work, all of it added up, and these 3 firms control more than that. And they don't just sit on cash. They hold a piece of almost every major company in America at the same time. The company that employs you, the one that insures your car, the one that owns the apartment you rent. Most of that isn't their own money. They manage it for millions of regular people. But it means the same 3 firms end up sitting among the biggest shareholders in almost every company that touches your life at the same time. Think about what that means. The businesses that are supposed to be fighting each other for your money all answer, at the top, to the same handful of shareholders. They're not competing for you. They're sitting on the same side of the table, watching you play. Now look at Jake's seat at that table. Americans under 40 today own just 3% of all the stocks in the country. Back in the late 1980s, that same age group, young people just like Jake at the same point in their lives, owned 6%. So in one generation, the young share of American ownership got cut clean in half. And here's the thing. The chips didn't vanish. They didn't burn up or disappear. They just slid down the table, away from the young players and toward the older, bigger, more concentrated ones, while Jake's generation was busy paying off tuition and handing over rent every single month. And honestly, you can understand Jake, really understand him here. He did everything they told him to do. He played by every rule he was handed, he worked hard, he showed up. And then his own body turned on him on a random Tuesday, and instead of being caught by some safety net, he got buried in debt for the crime of getting sick. So Jake looks up from the table and he sees the truth of the whole game laid out in front of him. It's rigged. The people who rigged it win whether he plays brilliantly or plays terribly. His skill doesn't matter, and neither does his effort, because the outcome was decided before he ever sat down. So Jake's reaction is completely logical. It's the same conclusion the 62% of his generation we met at the start of this video are reaching. He wants what feels basic, what feels fair, healthcare he can actually afford, a home he can actually reach, a life that doesn't fall apart the first time something goes wrong. He just wants a country that looks after him. And that's really all it comes down to. And from there, he arrives at a conclusion that millions of people are arriving at right alongside him. Take it from the rich and hand it back to the people. Seize the giant corporations and break them apart, then take that concentrated wealth and hand it to the ones who actually need it. And when you've lived Jake's life, that doesn't sound radical at all. It feels like justice, it feels overdue. It feels like the only sane move left on the table. There's just one problem. A country recently tried to do exactly that, to flip the entire table over and do precisely what Jake is asking for. And what happened next is the part nobody ever told him. The country was Norway. And here's the part that should stop Jake cold. Norway isn't some broken socialist nightmare. It's one of the richest, best run, most comfortable countries on the entire planet. This wasn't even radical socialism. It was just one small piece of what Jake is asking for. And it backfired inside a single year. In 2023, the Norwegian government did almost exactly what Jake dreams about. The rich have too much. So the state will take a slice of it, a modest wealth tax on the largest fortunes, and use it to fund the safety net for everyone else. On paper, it was reasonable. The logic was identical to Jake's, but reality moved a lot faster than the paperwork. Within months, more than 30 of Norway's wealthiest billionaires simply packed up and left the country, a record number in a single year. Among them was one of the richest men in Norway who moved to Switzerland for the single purpose of keeping his fortune away from the new tax. Economists have a name for this: capital flight. The moment a tax gets punitive, the money gets up and walks across the border. The billionaires didn't stay and pay. They were gone before the ink was dry. And here's where it gets brutal. The government expected this small tax to bring in a fresh wave of money for the public, somewhere around $150 million in new revenue. Instead, when those fortunes fled, they took their entire tax base with them, and the country ended up losing closer to $600 million. Run that math. They reached for $150 million and blew a whole 4 times that size in their own budget. The state aimed a weapon straight at the ultra-rich, and the only thing it hit was itself. This is the lesson Jake was never taught. When a government points a tax weapon at a billionaire, that billionaire is the one person on earth who can dodge it without breaking a sweat. He's got the private jet, the foreign lawyers, the assets that move with a single phone call. He doesn't fight the tax. He just leaves and barely feels a thing. But that crater in the budget, it doesn't stay empty. The safety net still has to be paid for. And since the billionaires are already gone, the bill gets handed to the one person who can't pack up and fly to Switzerland. That person is Jake, the renter, the worker, the guy already buried in debt from a surgery he never asked for. He's the one who ends up paying for the whole thing, through higher taxes on the little he actually has. And then Norway did something even darker. Watching the rich escape, the government panicked and built a financial wall, a steep exit tax, punishing wealthy citizens just for trying to move their money out of the country. Let that sink in. The first instinct of a state built on freedom and fairness was to trap people and their money inside its own borders. The promise of more freedom quietly grew a fence. So the table flip Jake dreams about comes with a receipt, and the receipt has his name on it. The billionaires leave, the money collapses, the safety net shows up half empty, and the bill for the entire experiment lands on the exact people it was supposed to save. People like Jake. Which leaves one last question. If flipping the table just hands Jake the bill, then what should he have been fighting for instead? So if flipping the table doesn't work, what does Jake actually want? Strip away the angry slogans, and his demand is simple. He wants healthcare that won't bankrupt him. He wants an education that doesn't chain him to debt for 30 years. He wants to know that if life goes sideways again, his country catches him instead of crushing him. That's not crazy. It's deeply human. And here's the part that critics get wrong when they call kids like Jake naive. His pain is real, and his goal is reasonable. The problem isn't what Jake wants. The problem is the solution he's been sold. Take everything from the rich and hand it out to everyone else. Because that solution rests on a fantasy, the idea that a billionaire is just a giant vault stuffed with cash, waiting to be cracked open. But he isn't. When someone owns billions, that money isn't sitting in a pool he swims in. It is invested in factories, offices, and the salaries of the people who show up to those jobs every morning. Take the billion, and you're not just taking from one rich man. You're draining the thing that pays 1,000 ordinary people. And this is the part nobody says out loud. If you want more from the safety net, somebody always has to pay for it. There is no free protection. There's only the question of who gets the bill. And when a government tries to put that bill on the rich do the one thing Jake can't. They leave. We just saw it in Norway. But Norway isn't some weird exception. France tried the exact same thing, slapped a heavy tax on its richest citizens, and watched a wave of them pack up and move across the border. It's a pattern that repeats almost every time someone tries it. Capital doesn't sit still and take the hit, it runs. And when it runs, the bill slides right back down onto people like Jake. So does the other side, full-blown socialism, have nothing good in it? No, be honest about it. Free healthcare, free education, those are genuinely good things, real comfort and real security. But there's a catch nobody puts on the brochure. None of it actually comes without a cost, and it isn't endless either, because you wait for it. You take a number and you wait in line for months, and the thing you actually needed might not be there anymore by the time your turn finally comes. And here's the deeper reason it never quite sits right with people here. We're wired to want something that's ours. We want to build, to climb, to own the thing we worked for and pass it on. That's not greed, that's instinct. A free market is messy and it has real problems, but it's the one system that runs with that instinct instead of trying to crush it out of people. The problems are real, but you fix them with a scalpel, you don't flip the whole table over. Because there's one price of full socialism that almost nobody talks about. You slowly stop being able to own things. That's the quiet truth in so many of these systems. The more the state owns and controls, the less of it is ever really yours. Your home, your land, your future, all of it sits on ground the state can reach into anytime it wants. You spend your whole life paying for something that was never really yours to begin with. But in the America Jake is fighting over, it's still different. You can buy a piece of land, build on it, and pass it down. Your parents lived on it, you live on it, and your kids will live on it after you. That thread of inheritance, the one thing that's actually yours, is exactly what Jake would be trading away. He thinks he's fighting for security, but the deal on the table asks him to hand over the one thing that was supposed to make him free. And politicians have built entire careers on this trap. Let's be honest, they'll promise you the world. Free everything, security for all, paid for by someone else. And notice who wins elections. The ones making the biggest, simplest, loudest promises. Because we'll tax the rich and take care of you sounds incredible. But it leads to exactly one place. The capital leaves, the money dries up, and they come back to tax you harder to fill the hole. You traded one problem for another. The easy answer lying right there on the surface is almost never the real one. So here we are, back at the fork in the road, the same place every generation eventually ends up standing. And let me say the quiet thing out loud, don't compare yourself to Norway. Norway is a small, tight-knit country of barely 5 million people. You are not. A big country is a different animal entirely, different in size, in history, in culture, in how much its people love their own freedom. What works on a country the size of a city does not just scale up to a continent. Look at the big nations across history. The bigger and more diverse a country gets, the harder it gets pulled toward heavier, more absolute forms of control just to hold itself together. That pull is real. And the only defense against it is refusing to hand over the keys in the first place. So let's be honest about where Jake is standing. The way things are right now is brutal. Nobody's denying the problems are real. They've been piling up for years, and they demand an answer. And Jake's generation is going to find one. Sooner or later, they will. The only question is what kind of answer it'll be, because a country like this can't be torn down to the studs and rebuilt from scratch. That's not reform. That's a demolition you don't get to undo. A country like this gets built on what's already here. You improve it, you fix what's broken. You pull the rod out with a scalpel, but the moment you decide the answer is to seize it all and tear it down, you're not buying yourself a better future. You're buying a catastrophe that lands on the exact people you were trying to save. And here's the part the whole video has been walking toward. The system Jake has now is harsh. It can grind a man down and bill him for the privilege, but it's also the one system on earth that still lets a nobody from nowhere build something, own it, and keep it. That's not nothing. That's the whole game. So you've seen the board now, all of it. What the rich do when you corner them, what free actually costs, and who ends up holding the bill when the money runs out. So here's the only question left, and I'm not going to answer it for you because it was never mine to answer in the first place, and that one belongs entirely to you. When it finally becomes your turn to choose, do you burn it all down, or do you fix it instead and hold on to the one thing that was ever really yours? Tell me in the comments, what kind of future is your generation building? And there's already another one waiting for you right there on the screen. See you there.
Premium, played it clean. Then there's appendix blue. 20 grand, 70 points gone, the dreams locked out of view. They sold him a ladder, he's holding up the floor. And the same 3 names on the bank that jobbed the door. Don't burn the house down, boy. You'll still be paying for the door.